Did you ever wonder how the Christmas decorations that filled every 1980s home could now be illegal? These decorations shaped holiday magic so deeply that no one imagined they carried danger. And if the things we trusted most could quietly harm us, what else did we miss? Lead tinsel icicle strands were the most dazzling addition to any Christmas tree in the 1980s, catching every flicker of light and sending it shimmering across the living room in waves of silver glory. Families draped them over branches with abandon, creating that cascading waterfall effect that made even modest trees look like holiday catalog photos. Kids loved running their fingers through the cool metallic strands, watching them sway as tree lights blinked behind them. Nobody questioned what made them so beautifully heavy, so smooth compared to cheaper plastic versions that curled and tangled. The answer was lead, a toxic metal woven directly into the strands that made them hang perfectly straight. Every time someone adjusted the tinsel, particles drifted into the air, settling onto carpets, furniture, and the hands of children who could not resist touching them. When researchers connected lead tinsel to health concerns, especially for young children who put everything in their mouths, regulators moved swiftly. The shimmer that once defined Christmas mornings became a symbol of hidden danger inside innocent traditions. Asbestos snow blankets for tree skirts were considered the height of holiday elegance in the 1980s, spreading across floors beneath decorated trees like freshly fallen powder. These fluffy white sheets looked impossibly realistic, creating that perfect winter scene families saw in department store windows. Parents carefully arranged them each December, tucking the edges around tree stands and piling wrapped gifts on top as if presents had landed in fresh snow. Nobody suspected that the fibers making the blankets so soft and flame-resistant were the same ones doctors would later connect to devastating lung diseases. Children crawled across them reaching for presents, pets napped on their surfaces, and vacuum cleaners stirred up invisible clouds every time someone tidied the living room. The asbestos fibers did not announce themselves with smell or texture. They simply drifted into the air and settled into lungs where they remained for decades. When health authorities recognized the danger, blankets were pulled from shelves and homes were urged to dispose of them carefully. What once symbolized cozy holiday perfection became a chilling reminder that comfort can carry invisible costs. Bubble lights with methylene chloride fluid were absolutely mesmerizing to children in the 1980s, their colorful tubes gurgling and bubbling as the heat from tiny bulbs brought the mysterious liquid inside to life. Families clipped them onto tree branches and watched the little towers of light dance with movement that seemed magical compared to ordinary static bulbs. Kids pressed their faces close, hypnotized by the rising bubbles that looked like tiny celebrations happening inside each glass tube. The colors glowed warmly, casting reflections across ornaments and tinsel while filling living rooms with that unmistakable holiday atmosphere everyone craved. What nobody realized was that the liquid creating those beautiful bubbles contained methylene chloride, a chemical capable of causing serious harm if the glass cracked or shattered. Parents placed these lights within easy reach of curious hands, never imagining that a broken tube could release dangerous vapors. When researchers documented the risks and regulators intervened, the charming bubble lights of childhood became cautionary examples of how enchanting designs can mask genuine hazards. Angel hair spun fiberglass was the ethereal finishing touch that turned ordinary Christmas trees into something heavenly in the 1980s. Families pulled wispy strands from plastic bags and draped them carefully across branches, creating that soft, cloud-like glow that made every tree look like it belonged in a winter fairy tale. The material caught light beautifully, shimmering with an almost supernatural quality that delighted children who begged to help with decorating. Parents encouraged them to join in, watching tiny fingers stretch the delicate fibers across greenery without any idea what those strands actually contained. Angel hair was made from spun fiberglass, and every touch released microscopic shards that embedded in skin, floated into eyes, and drifted into lungs with each excited breath. Kids often complained of itchy hands or irritated eyes after decorating, symptoms parents dismissed as holiday excitement or dry winter air. When health experts finally identified the respiratory risks and skin irritation caused by these fibers, the the dreamy decoration was banned. Angel hair remains a bittersweet memory of how something beautiful could leave invisible damage. Spray-on flocking with chlorinated solvents was the secret weapon for families who wanted their Christmas trees to look freshly dusted with mountain snow. In the 1980s, parents would shake aerosol cans and coat branches, windowsills, and wreaths with white foam that dried into that perfect powdery finish. The smell was sharp and chemical, filling rooms with fumes that lingered long after decorating was done. But nobody thought twice about breathing it in. Kids watched in awe as parents transformed greenery into frosted masterpieces, sometimes helping to spray corners their parents could not reach. The chlorinated solvents inside those cans were powerful enough to simulate snow perfectly, but they also released volatile compounds that accumulated in enclosed spaces throughout the holiday season. Families sat in living rooms surrounded by freshly flocked decorations, inhaling chemicals no one imagined could cause respiratory harm. When scientists connected indoor air quality problems to these sprays, manufacturers were forced to reformulate or discontinue. The ease of creating instant winter magic came with a price nobody saw until damage was done. Lead-painted ceramic Christmas villages were treasured centerpieces in countless 1980s homes, their detailed houses and shops glowing warmly beneath strings of miniature lights. Families collected pieces year after year, building elaborate winter scenes on mantels and display tables that became the heart of holiday decorating. Children loved examining the tiny windows, doors, and figurines, often picking up pieces to look at the intricate details painted with bright, glossy colors. Those vibrant reds, greens, and yellows came from glazes that contained lead, a detail no manufacturer felt compelled to disclose. Every time someone dusted the village, rearranged buildings, or touched the smooth ceramic surfaces, microscopic lead particles transferred onto fingers that later touched faces and food. Parents encouraged children to help set up the display, never suspecting the family tradition was quietly exposing everyone to a dangerous heavy metal. When testing revealed how much lead these decorations contained, regulators demanded changes that ended production of the original formulas. Those cherished villages now carry warnings that transform nostalgia into unease. Mercury glass ornament garlands were prized possessions in 1980s households, their antique silver finish lending elegance that modern ornaments could not match. Families inherited them from grandparents or discovered them in specialty shops, stringing the delicate spheres across mantels and tree branches where they caught light with an almost liquid shimmer. The vintage look was achieved through double-walled glass with a reflective coating sealed inside, creating that distinctive mirror-like glow that made everything sparkle. What most families never knew was that older versions contained actual mercury compounds in their reflective coating. If an ornament cracked, chipped, or shattered, the toxic metal could escape into the air or onto surfaces where children played. People handled these ornaments carefully because they were fragile, never realizing gentleness was also a matter of safety. When environmental regulations tightened around mercury products, these garlands became prohibited items that families were urged to dispose of through hazardous waste programs. The elegant shimmer that elevated holiday decor now represents a generation's unknowing exposure. Electric candle lights without thermal cutoffs sat proudly in windows throughout the 1980s, their warm glow signaling holiday cheer to every neighbor passing by. Families placed them on sills, plugged them in, and left them burning for hours, sometimes days, without considering the heat building inside plastic bases. The soft, flickering light looked peaceful and traditional, so nobody imagined these simple decorations could pose any real threat. But early electric candles lacked the automatic shutoff features that modern versions include as standard safety measures. The bulbs inside grew dangerously hot over time, and plastic housings were never designed to withstand sustained heat exposure. Curtains brushed against warm bases, wooden sills absorbed rising temperatures, and transformers worked overtime without any mechanism to interrupt the current. Fires started in homes where families assumed the candles were safe, often while everyone slept believing the glow was harmless. When fire investigators traced blazes back to these unregulated candles, mandatory safety standards finally arrived. The cozy window tradition came with risks families only understood after tragedy struck. Cadmium red painted wooden ornaments hung from Christmas trees across the country in the 1980s, their bright crimson finish adding that perfect pop of traditional holiday color. Families loved how the rich red shades stood out against green branches, catching light in ways that made even simple wooden shapes look festive. Craft stores sold them by the dozen, and parents often let children help paint additional ornaments at home using similar commercial paints without checking labels. The vivid red pigment that made these ornaments so appealing came from cadmium, a toxic heavy metal that created colors more brilliant than safer alternatives could achieve. Every time someone handled the ornaments, adjusted their placement, or brushed against them while reaching for presents, tiny particles of cadmium paint transferred onto skin. Children who put ornaments in their mouths or touched them and then ate cookies absorbed the metal directly. When researchers documented cadmium's dangers, including kidney damage and bone weakening, regulators banned its use in consumer products. The cheerful red that once symbolized Christmas spirit became a cautionary tale about hidden ingredients. Aluminum icicles with sharp, unfinished edges dangled from trees in the 1980s like frozen rain caught mid-fall, their metallic surfaces reflecting every color from surrounding lights. Families bought them in bulk, tossing handfuls onto branches until trees sparkled with that retro shimmer that felt quintessentially festive. Kids loved helping, grabbing fistfuls of thin metal strips and draping them anywhere they could reach. But these icicles were manufactured cheaply, stamped from aluminum sheets and packaged without any smoothing process. The edges remained razor-sharp, capable of slicing fingers with even gentle handling. Children often discovered this painfully, ending up with cuts that parents dismissed as minor holiday hazards. Beyond the cuts, these metal icicles conducted electricity if they fell across light strands or touched exposed wiring, creating shock risks nobody anticipated from simple decorations. When safety advocates documented injuries and electrical dangers, regulations required edge finishing or discontinuation. The sparkling icicles that once seemed like harmless festive additions became symbols of an era when safety standards lagged behind holiday enthusiasm. Formaldehyde-treated artificial garlands were draped across mantels, staircases, and doorways in nearly every 1980s home, their lush green appearance lasting season after season without wilting. Families loved how realistic they looked compared to older plastic versions, and the convenience of never replacing them made the investment worthwhile. Parents wrapped them around banisters while children helped secure them with ribbons, everyone breathing in that faint chemical smell nobody questioned. The garlands held their shape because manufacturers treated them with formaldehyde, a preservative that slowly released invisible fumes throughout the holiday season. Every time someone walked past or adjusted a draped section, more chemical escaped into living spaces where families gathered. Children sleeping near decorated doorways breathed the vapors all night without anyone realizing the exposure was happening. When researchers connected formaldehyde off-gassing to respiratory irritation and long-term concerns, regulations forced manufacturers to find safer methods. The garlands that once seemed like smart investments became reminders of how convenience can mask invisible dangers. PVC blow-mold yard figures with toxic plasticizers stood proudly on lawns throughout the 1980s, their cheerful Santas and snowmen glowing from internal bulbs that made neighborhoods feel magical after dark. Families collected them over years, adding new figures each season until entire yards became illuminated winter wonderlands. Children loved running between them, touching their smooth plastic surfaces and peering inside at the warm orange glow of incandescent bulbs. These figures were made from polyvinyl chloride softened with plasticizers that made the material flexible enough to mold into complex shapes. Under summer storage heat and winter bulb warmth, those plasticizers slowly migrated to the surface and released fumes that drifted across yards where families gathered. The chemicals responsible for making the plastic pliable were later linked to hormone disruption, especially troubling for children who spent hours playing near the glowing figures. When regulations tightened around these compounds, manufacturers scrambled to reformulate. The beloved yard decorations that defined neighborhood holiday spirit became symbols of an era that prioritized appearance over safety. Lead-soldered stained glass tree toppers crowned Christmas trees in the 1980s with handcrafted elegance that mass-produced plastic stars could never match. Families treasured these delicate pieces, often receiving them as wedding gifts or inheriting them from grandparents who valued artisan craftsmanship. The colored glass caught tree lights beautifully, casting rainbow patterns across ceilings and walls while everyone gathered below to exchange presents. What made these toppers so structurally sound was the lead solder holding each piece of glass together, applied by craftspeople who worked without gloves or ventilation. Every time someone placed the topper on the tree, adjusted its position, or packed it away, tiny particles of lead transferred onto hands that later touched faces and food. Children lifted onto shoulders to place the star were exposed directly, their small fingers gripping the metal seams without anyone imagining the danger. When health authorities documented lead's devastating effects on developing brains, these handcrafted treasures became hazardous heirlooms. The artistry that once elevated holiday decorating now carries warnings about handling and display. Nitrocellulose-coated paper chains hung in loops across 1980s living rooms, their shiny surfaces catching light and adding festive color to every corner. Children spent hours at kitchen tables cutting strips, gluing links together, and coating them with lacquer sprays that made the paper gleam like something from a department store display. The craft was a beloved holiday tradition, teaching patience and creativity while producing decorations the whole family could admire. What nobody realized was that nitrocellulose, the compound making that glossy finish possible, was essentially the same material used in early film stock notorious for fires. The coated chains hung near fireplaces, candles, and hot light bulbs, inches away from ignition sources that could transform innocent decorations into fast-spreading flames. Families strung them across rooms without understanding how quickly fire could race along those shiny links. When fire safety experts documented the risks of nitrocellulose in home crafts, the sprays were reformulated or discontinued. The cheerful paper chains that represented family togetherness became cautionary examples of flammable beauty. PCB-containing light-set transformers hummed quietly beneath Christmas trees in the 1980s, powering elaborate blinking patterns that made decorations feel alive and magical. Families plugged in multiple light strings, relying on small transformer boxes to regulate electricity and create the twinkling sequences everyone loved. The boxes sat on carpets, tucked behind tree stands, sometimes buried under presents where children crawled and played. Inside those unassuming plastic cases was oil containing polychlorinated biphenyls, industrial coolants that prevented overheating during long hours of operation. When transformers aged, cracked, or overheated, the PCB oil could leak onto floors, carpets, and hands of anyone who touched them. Families cleaned up mysterious oily residue without realizing they were spreading contamination that would linger for years. Studies eventually linked PCB exposure to cancer and neurological damage, prompting regulators to ban the compounds from consumer products. The little boxes that powered holiday magic became toxic relics requiring careful disposal. The twinkling lights they powered came with costs nobody understood until decades later. Bare wire extension cords for outdoor displays snaked across 1980s lawns, powering elaborate light arrangements that transformed ordinary homes into neighborhood attractions. Families ran these cords under bushes, across walkways, and up trees, connecting dozens of light strands to single outlets pushed far beyond their intended capacity. The urgency to create the brightest display often meant using whatever cords were available, including older models with damaged insulation or exposed copper never designed for outdoor moisture. Rain, snow, and morning dew soaked into worn sections where bare wire waited to deliver shocks to anyone who touched them. Children playing in yards sometimes grabbed cords while running, pets chewed through casings left across grass, and adults adjusting displays received jolts ranging from startling to dangerous. House fires started when overloaded connections sparked against dry leaves or wooden siding. When electrical codes finally caught up with holiday enthusiasm, Regulations required weatherproof ratings and ground fault protection. The festive displays that brought neighborhoods together also brought dangers nobody fully appreciated. Benzene-dipped pine cone ornaments appeared on Christmas trees throughout the 1980s, their preserved natural beauty adding rustic charm to holiday decorating. Craft stores sold them by the bag, and families collected them from parks and backyards, dipping them in solutions that kept them looking fresh and sometimes adding pleasant scents. The benzene-based solvents used in commercial preservation penetrated deep into the cone scales, preventing decay and giving them that slightly glossy appearance. Parents helped children tie ribbons around the stems, handling the treated cones repeatedly without gloves or thought of chemical exposure. The ornaments hung on trees near warm lights, releasing vapors that accumulated in closed rooms throughout the season. Some families noticed headaches or dizziness during decorating sessions, but blamed stuffy rooms rather than the cones. When researchers identified benzene as a known carcinogen linked to blood cancers, the preservation methods were abandoned. The natural ornaments that connected families to outdoor beauty became symbols of how toxic chemicals infiltrated even simple traditions. Chloroform-based snow globe fluid swirled inside countless decorative globes that sat on mantels and shelves in 1980s homes, their miniature winter scenes captivating children who shook them endlessly. The tiny snowflakes drifted with perfect slowness because the liquid inside was denser than water, creating that dreamy effect everyone associated with holiday magic. Kids pressed their faces close to the glass, watching the flakes settle around tiny Santas, snowmen, and village scenes, while parents smiled at their wonder. What nobody knew was that some manufacturers used chloroform-based mixtures to achieve that ideal snow-falling effect, chemicals that could cause serious harm if globes cracked or shattered. Children who dropped globes and helped clean up the spilled liquid absorbed the compound through skin, while vapors entered lungs before anyone realized cleanup required more than paper towels. When product safety testing revealed the toxic contents, manufacturers switched to safer glycol-based fluids. The enchanting globes that once symbolized peaceful winter scenes became reminders that beauty sometimes floats in dangerous solutions. Chromated copper arsenate wooden decorations hung from 1980s Christmas trees, their hand-carved shapes showcasing the natural beauty of pressure-treated lumber that resisted rot and insects. Craft fairs and hobby shops sold ornaments, figurines, and small decorative boxes made from this greenish-tinted wood that seemed to last forever without deteriorating. Families admired the durability, never questioning why the wood maintained its integrity year after year, while untreated pieces cracked and faded. The secret was chromated copper arsenate, a preservative containing real arsenic that prevented biological breakdown, but also created surfaces that slowly released toxic compounds. Every time someone handled these ornaments, adjusted their placement, or stored them with bare hands, microscopic arsenic particles transferred onto skin. Children who put wooden ornaments in their mouths or touched them and then ate cookies absorbed the poison directly. When researchers documented arsenic's presence in treated wood products, regulators banned it from residential use. The durable decorations that once seemed like smart purchases became hazardous items requiring careful disposal. Phthalate-softened vinyl advent calendars hung on kitchen walls and bedroom doors throughout the 1980s, their flexible plastic windows hiding chocolates or tiny toys behind each numbered door. Children loved the daily ritual of opening a new window, counting down to Christmas with treats that made the wait feel manageable and exciting. Parents appreciated how the soft vinyl calendars could roll up for storage without cracking, returning year after year looking almost new. That flexibility came from phthalates, chemical softeners that kept the vinyl pliable, but also migrated slowly to the surface over time. Every touch transferred these compounds onto small fingers that went straight into mouths, especially after handling the chocolates hidden inside. The calendars hung in warm kitchens where heat accelerated the chemical release, filling rooms with fumes nobody detected or understood. When studies linked phthalates to hormone disruption and developmental problems in children, regulators restricted their use in products marketed to kids. The beloved countdown calendars that once built Christmas anticipation became examples of how everyday plastics carried invisible risks. Radium-painted glow-in-the-dark ornaments fascinated children in the 1980s, their eerie green luminescence making Christmas trees visible even after the lights went out. Families displayed these ornaments proudly, watching them absorb light during the day and release it slowly through the night like tiny captured stars. Kids would turn off all the lights to see which ornaments glowed brightest, pressing their faces close to watch the soft radiance. What nobody understood was that the glow came from radium, a radioactive element used in watch dials before its dangers became widely known. These ornaments continued circulating through craft fairs and antique shops, passed between families who had no idea they were handling radioactive material. Every moment spent near these glowing treasures meant exposure to radiation that accumulated silently. When nuclear safety regulations caught up with consumer products, these ornaments were classified as hazardous waste. The magical glow that made bedrooms feel enchanted now represents one of the most unsettling discoveries about holiday decorations. Crystalline asbestos glitter sparkled across countless Christmas decorations in the 1980s, adding shimmer to everything from homemade ornaments to store-bought wreaths. Families shook the fine powder over glue-covered surfaces, watching it catch light and transform ordinary crafts into dazzling holiday creations. Children loved the sparkle, often helping to apply the glitter with bare hands and blowing away excess without concern for what they might inhale. The crystalline structure that made this glitter brilliant came from processed asbestos fibers, ground fine enough to look like innocent craft supplies. Every shake of the container released microscopic particles that floated through the air and settled into lungs where they remained for decades. Families who made ornaments together were unknowingly sharing exposure to dangerous materials. When health officials connected craft glitter to asbestos-related diseases, the products were pulled from stores immediately. The sparkle that made holiday projects feel special became a haunting reminder of how danger hides inside innocent traditions. Lead crystal hanging prisms dangled from chandeliers and Christmas trees throughout the 1980s, their faceted surfaces splitting light into rainbow cascades that danced across walls and ceilings. Families treasured these elegant decorations, often receiving them as gifts or inheriting them from relatives who appreciated fine crystal craftsmanship. Children loved watching the colors shift and swirl whenever someone walked past or a breeze caught the dangling prisms. The crystal that made these rainbows so vivid contained lead oxide, which gave the glass its exceptional clarity and weight. Over time, especially in homes with varying humidity, the lead slowly migrated to the surface where it transferred onto hands during handling. Families who polished their prisms regularly absorbed more lead with every cleaning session. When scientists documented how lead crystal released toxic metal through normal use, warnings spread quickly through decorating communities. The dancing rainbows that elevated holiday decor now carry cautions about display and keeping them away from curious children. Trichloroethylene cleaned ornament sets filled store shelves in the 1980s, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the promise of perfect holiday displays. Manufacturers used this powerful industrial solvent to remove oils and residue from mass-produced ornaments before packaging, leaving that flawless shine customers expected. Families unpacked boxes each December, handling pieces that still carried traces of the cleaning chemical in tiny surface imperfections. The solvent evaporated slowly at room temperature, releasing fumes that accumulated in closed storage boxes and drifted into living rooms once ornaments hung on heated trees. Children who helped unpack decorations breathed concentrated vapors from freshly opened boxes without recognizing the smell as dangerous. Parents arranged these gleaming spheres on branches, never suspecting the perfect shine came with invisible health costs. When researchers linked trichloroethylene to liver damage and cancer, manufacturers switched to safer methods. The pristine ornaments that represented holiday perfection became examples of how industrial shortcuts entered family homes. Flammable celluloid decoration figurines stood on mantels and windowsills throughout the 1980s, their detailed features and translucent glow making them favorites among collectors and casual decorators. Families displayed delicate Santas, angels, and nativity figures near candles and warm light bulbs, admiring how the thin materials seemed to glow from within. Children loved examining the intricate details molded into each piece, handling them carefully because they seemed precious. What nobody realized was that celluloid, one of the earliest plastics, was essentially solidified nitrocellulose that could ignite with startling speed. A figurine placed too close to a candle or hot bulb could burst into fire within seconds, burning so rapidly that reaction was impossible. Families who arranged these decorations near heat sources unknowingly created fire hazards. When fire investigations traced holiday blazes back to these figurines, regulations ended their production. The delicate beauty that graced displays became a symbol of how flammable materials infiltrated homes during an era of limited safety testing. Selling homemade holiday baked goods without permits was a simple way to share joy and earn a little cash in the 1970s. Families made fudge, fruitcake, cookies, and sweetbreads in their home kitchens, wrapping them in foil or wax paper and selling them to neighbors, teachers, or church members. No one asked for licenses or health inspections. People trusted the hands that baked the food, not the paperwork behind it. There was pride in every recipe, many passed down through generations and guarded like treasure. And buyers felt like they were supporting friends, not just buying dessert. People trusted each other. The taste of a neighbor's homemade treat felt like a connection, not a risk. Today, though, food handling laws make this illegal without proper certification. Kitchens must be inspected, ingredients documented, and packaging regulated. Something warm and human was lost in that shift, but the memory of receiving those imperfect, lovingly made treats still brings comfort every holiday season. It started with a yellow circle and 2 black dots, a simple smile drawn to brighten up a workplace. But by the 1970s, it had become something much bigger, everywhere, on everything. The smiley face was more than a logo. It was a feeling, a hope, a little sun on a pin. You saw it on buttons, t-shirts, lunchboxes, coffee mugs, and even wallpaper. It winked from notebooks and bumper stickers. It cheered up grocery bags. It followed you into stores and classrooms and dreams. It became the unofficial mascot of the 1970s. Cheery, slightly cheesy, and weirdly profound. But under the cheerfulness, there was something deeper, maybe even desperate. Because behind every exaggerated grin is a question. Do we really feel as good as we pretend? Maybe not. But wearing that face gave us permission to try. It reminded us that happiness could be a choice, or at least a style. It was optimism pinned to your chest. And in that decade, people needed it. Bubble lights on Christmas trees were little tubes of magic, glowing like tiny lava lamps across the branches. Each bulb, filled with colored liquid, would come alive as the heat rose and bubbles began to dance inside. Kids would stare for minutes, mesmerized by their rhythm and sparkle. They weren't just decorations, they were living, glowing proof that the tree was awake. Every family had their favorite color, blue, red, or gold, and everyone knew not to touch them while they bubbled. They hummed softly in the darkened room, a hypnotic mix of science and Christmas wonder. Parents loved them for their retro charm, and children swore they were enchanted. Even though the cords tangled and a bulb would always refuse to work, no one cared. The glow they gave off felt warm and alive, different from any ordinary light. When the tree lights went out at night, the last few bubbles would rise, fade, and rest, like Christmas itself taking a breath before morning. They were fragile, fleeting, and unforgettable. Long before LED strings or flashing displays, bubble lights were a simple kind of magic that needed no batteries, only wonder. Using bubble lights that actually bubbled on the tree was one of those small wonders that made 1970s Christmas trees feel alive in ways modern LED strands never replicate. These lights had glass tubes filled with colored liquid that slowly started bubbling once the bulb beneath them warmed up, creating a hypnotic display children could stare at for hours. Families waited patiently after plugging in the tree, watching as the first bubble rose through the liquid and more followed until the entire tree seemed to shimmer with motion. The colors were vivid, the effect almost magical, and the gentle heat from each bulb added warmth that balanced cold December nights. Kids would lie on the floor beneath the branches, looking up at the bubbling tubes like tiny lava lamps scattered among the ornaments. Parents warned against touching them because they got hot, but that only made them more fascinating. These lights required patience to warm up, and not every bulb bubbled evenly, giving each one its own personality. Modern safety standards eventually pushed bubble lights to the margins, replaced by cooler options that never captured the same wonder. Driving around to look at Christmas lights without seatbelts was one of those little joys that defined December nights in the 1970s. Families would load into the car after dinner, kids piling into laps or lying across the back seat while the heater hummed and the windows fogged just enough to need a little swipe with a sleeve. No one thought about rules or risks. It was about being together in that warm, rolling bubble, pointing out the biggest displays, the brightest reindeer, the houses where every inch twinkled like stars. Parents drove slowly, sometimes leaning out the window with one arm, sometimes steering with a confidence that only came from doing this every year of their lives. Today, though, not wearing a seatbelt is enough to get you pulled over before you reach the end of your street. Child safety laws turned what once felt natural into something unthinkable. But if you grew up in that era, you can still feel the vinyl seats beneath your hands, still hear your siblings shouting, still remember how safe it all felt before the world decided otherwise. Halloween lunchboxes in the 1980s were a mini celebration all on their own. Moms went all out, packing thermoses of hot apple cider and sandwich bags of candy corn next to peanut butter sandwiches. Hostess rolled out limited edition scary cakes with orange frosting and chocolate bats, and kids traded them like currency at lunch tables. You could hear the faint crinkle of wax paper and smell the sweet mix of sugar and apples as kids compared their lunches. Sometimes someone would sneak in a tiny candy bar early and instantly become a hero. Even the lunchboxes themselves, tin, colorful, and dented from years of use, were part of the ritual. Some kids even had Halloween-themed lunchboxes covered in pumpkins or cartoon ghosts. Opening your lunch felt like unwrapping a party in the middle of a school day. The cafeteria buzzed with sugar and excitement, everyone counting down the hours until trick-or-treating began. Even the smell of apple cider mixed with crayons and floor wax felt nostalgic. It was a small, comforting reminder that Halloween was about joy as much as fear. Those themed lunchbox treats were simple, homemade gestures that made kids feel seen and special. A tiny bit of October magic tucked between math and recess. Holiday punch bowls and cheese balls were the twin stars of every grown-up Christmas party. In kitchens across America, tables gleamed under the light of cut glass bowls filled with ruby red punch floating with slices of orange. Nearby, cheese balls rolled in nuts, or parsley sat proudly beside stacks of Ritz crackers. The smell was rich, savory, and sweet all at once, and every adult had their own secret recipe. Laughter grew louder with each refill, stories grew taller, and someone always spilled just a little on the tablecloth. Kids peeked in from the hallway, stealing crackers before running off again. These gatherings were more than parties. They were annual reunions, proof that friendship could be as warm as the punch itself. Even now, the sight of that silver ladle or the taste of cheddar mixed with cream cheese can bring the past rushing back. It wasn't about sophistication, it was about celebration, plain and true. The clink of glasses, the glow of the tree, the hum of old records. Together they made the room feel like Christmas itself. Caroling door to door after supper was one of those traditions that made the cold December air feel warmer simply because you were sharing it with neighbors. Families bundled up in scarves and mittens, grabbed songbooks or relied on memory, and walked from porch to porch singing carols that echoed off snow-covered lawns. Neighbors opened their doors with surprise and delight, sometimes joining for a verse, sometimes pressing cookies into small gloved hands. The singing was rarely perfect, voices cracking on high notes and children giggling through verses. But perfection was never the point. The point was connection. the kind that only happens when people show up unannounced with nothing to offer but a song. Streetlights glowed overhead, breath turned to mist, and for a few hours the neighborhood felt like a single extended family. Parents taught children lyrics passed down for generations, and singing them aloud in the dark created memories that outlasted any gift. Today, caroling has become rare, replaced by busy schedules and concerns about knocking on strangers' doors. But anyone who walked those cold streets with a chorus of voices still remembers the feeling of belonging to something larger. Decorating with cotton snow and spray frost turned ordinary homes into dreamy winter scenes. Windows glistened with fake frost, and tabletops disappeared under fluffy white cotton that looked just enough like snow to make you believe. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. It was Christmas magic on a budget. Children helped stretch out the cotton, tucking it around nativity scenes and toy trains. A few sprays from the frost can transform glass into icy wonder, the edges sparkling in the morning sun. Parents loved how simple it was, how a little creativity could turn the living room into a winter postcard. The smell of aerosol frost hung in the air, blending with pine and cinnamon from nearby candles. When the lights came on at night, the cotton caught every glow and turned it into sparkle. It didn't melt, didn't fade. It just stayed, soft and pure, until New Year's Day. Those cotton landscapes made even warm weather homes feel like the North Pole, one stretch of fluff at a time. If you were lucky enough to have cable in the 1980s, you knew that October on MTV was an event. The channel transformed into a non-stop Halloween party filled with fog machines, neon lights, and rock stars who looked straight out of a haunted house. Music videos from Michael Jackson, Alice Cooper, and Ozzy Osbourne turned every living room into a teenage vampire's dream. You could almost feel the static from the television in the air as your heart thumped to the beat of Thriller. Every segment felt like a glimpse into a world where Halloween and rock music shared the same soul. Even the commercials were cool, flashy promos that made you want to record everything on a blank VHS tape just to keep the vibe alive. VJs wore costumes, ran contests for the best homemade videos, and played horror-themed music countdowns that lasted all weekend. You would sit inches from the television, mesmerized by flashing lights and guitar riffs that felt rebellious and spooky at once. MTV's Halloween specials defined cool. They made the holiday feel electric, modern, and full of attitude. Watching them with friends meant you were in on something bigger, a shared culture of music, mischief, and creativity. For kids growing up in suburban neighborhoods, MTV turned Halloween from a night of candy into a full-blown cultural moment. Using real candles in church pageants and school plays was one of the most beautiful and unnerving traditions of the 1970s. Children walked down aisles holding flickering flames while choirs sang softly, the warm glow reflecting off every wall and making the entire room feel holy and alive. Teachers handed out matches or lighters without hesitation, helping kids ignite candles they barely understood how to hold. There was a reverence in the room that even the adults could feel, a sense that the fire itself was part of the story. No one imagined disaster. They imagined tradition, history, and meaning. And for a few moments, every child felt trusted beyond their years. The scent of melted wax filled the air, becoming part of the memory itself. Today, though, open flames around children are banned in almost every school and most churches. Fire regulations leave no room for risk, even in the name of tradition. But anyone who stood there holding that tiny flame remembers how powerful it felt, how it transformed an ordinary evening into something unforgettable. Parade TV, watching on Christmas morning, was the calm before the storm. The quiet moment when the whole family gathered together, still in pajamas, before the sound of tearing wrapping paper filled the house. The television flickered with color as floats from the Disney Christmas parade glided down Main Street, Mickey and Minnie waving through clouds of fake snow. Children leaned forward, half eating breakfast, half dreaming of being there in person, while parents sipped coffee and let the warmth of the morning sink in. The brass bands played carols that seemed to echo through the room, and Disney characters danced with precision that felt impossibly perfect. Every float was a moving painting, shimmering tinsel, waving princesses, candy canes taller than cars. For 1 hour, the living room turned into the happiest place on earth. When Santa appeared at the end, it felt like the signal. Now Christmas had truly begun. Some families kept the parade on in the background while gifts were passed around, the announcers' cheerful voices mingling with laughter and the rustle of wrapping paper. Others made it a ritual, no gifts until Santa's sleigh appeared on screen. It wasn't just a parade, it was a rhythm, the heartbeat of a generation's Christmas morning. The glow of the television matched the glow of the tree, and for a while, the world outside disappeared. Watching the parade meant something simple but sacred. Family, together, beginning the day in wonder before the chaos of joy took over. Watching the Yule log broadcast for hours without changing the channel was one of those strange 1970s traditions that made perfect sense at the time and baffles people today. Television stations would air footage of a crackling fireplace, sometimes for the entire morning, offering families without real fireplaces a visual substitute that felt cozy and festive. People left it on during breakfast, while opening presents, or simply as background ambiance while the household buzzed with activity. The fire never changed, the logs never shifted dramatically, and yet families watched with genuine contentment, letting the flickering flames fill their living rooms with warmth they could almost feel. Children stared at the screen wondering if the fire would ever go out, while adults appreciated the calm it brought to chaotic mornings. There was no plot, no dialogue, just the steady crackle of burning wood repeated on a loop. Some families made it a point of pride to keep the Yule log on all day, as if changing the channel would break the spell. The tradition faded as programming options multiplied, but those who remember it recall a time when television could offer peace instead of noise. Homemade felt stockings with sequins were labors of love that hung proudly from mantels. Each one told a story, stitched by hand, decorated with glue and glitter, buttons for eyes, and yarn for names. They weren't bought, they were built, piece by piece, often around the kitchen table. Mothers snipped fabric scraps from old clothes, turning them into something bright and personal. Children helped, scattering sequins across the floor like tiny stars. The stockings weren't perfect, but that made them beautiful. Some had snowmen, others reindeer, some just a name stitched crooked in red thread. They were light, soft, and warm to the touch, filled with small gifts and candy canes that made Christmas morning shimmer. Even when the seams came loose or the colors faded, no one could throw them away. Each stitch held the sound of laughter and the smell of cookies baking in the next room. Today's store-bought stockings look clean and precise, but they can't hold the heartbeat sewn into those homemade ones. It is hard to explain the excitement of opening that crinkly Ben Cooper costume box. Inside was a flat, noisy sheet of plastic with a printed superhero or monster and a hard mask that looked nothing like the picture on the package. The mask had 2 tiny nose holes and a rubber band that always snapped before the night was over. You would breathe inside it until it fogged up, smelling faintly of paint and sweat, but that was part of the magic. Kids felt like movie stars just by tying that fragile plastic around their backs. Walking down the block with dozens of other plastic heroes and princesses, you could hear the soft hiss of those outfits rubbing together in the cold October air. It was a sound every 1980s Halloween shared, a mix of excitement, cheap plastic, and freedom. Sure, the masks cracked, the capes ripped, and by house number 5 you were already carrying half your costume in one hand. But for that short window of time, you were unstoppable. Nothing felt more official than trick-or-treating in a Ben Cooper costume, even if you had to tape it back together halfway through the night. Driving home. Christmas trees on car roofs without tying them properly was almost a holiday sport in the 1970s. Families would buy a tree that was always 2 feet taller than the living room allowed, hoist it onto the roof by sheer force of will, and toss 1 or 2 loops of twine over it with a confidence that probably came from nowhere rational. The wind would whip through the branches as the car pulled onto the road, and everyone inside held their breath just a little, watching for any sudden wobble. Nobody thought about fines or traffic violations or the possibility of the tree tumbling dramatically into the street. It was just part of the adventure, part of the ritual of getting that perfect pine safely home. Today, though, even slightly unsecured loads can earn you a ticket on the spot. Highways and city streets have become strict zones of compliance, leaving no room for the messy charm of trial and error. But the memory of those rides home, filled with laughter and the smell of fresh pine creeping into the car, remains untouchable. Homemade fudge and divinity candy were the edible treasures of the season. Pots clattered, spoons stirred, and sugar clouds filled the kitchen with the scent of patience. Grandmothers stood watch like generals of sweetness, stirring just long enough for the fudge to thicken or the divinity to hold its shape. Every batch felt like alchemy, boiling sugar, butter, and cocoa transforming into something smooth and rich. A good batch was gold. A bad one meant starting over, but no one complained. It was a labor of love, not convenience. Wax paper lined the counters, cooling the treats before they were wrapped in ribbons or tucked into tins for neighbors. Children were allowed to lick the spoons, the taste warm and sugary and perfect. When shared, it wasn't just candy. It was affection that could be held in your hand. Those recipes were family heirlooms, passed on with smudged cards and whispered instructions. Even today, the first bite of homemade fudge still tastes like a memory that never stopped being sweet. Recording Christmas specials off the television was an event that required planning, patience, and a willingness to sit beside the VCR with your finger hovering over the pause button. In the 1970s, holiday specials aired once a year, and if you missed them, you waited 12 whole months for another chance. Families gathered around the television with blank tapes ready, determined to capture every second of Rudolph, Frosty, or the Grinch before the next commercial interrupted. The person in charge of the remote became the hero of the evening, stopping the recording just before ads and resuming the moment the show returned. Most tapes ended up with bits of commercials spliced between scenes, but nobody cared. Those imperfect recordings became treasures, watched over and over until the tape wore thin and the picture started to wobble. Kids memorized every line, every song, and every pause where someone had fumbled the remote. There was pride in owning a collection of Christmas specials, even if the quality was grainy. Streaming killed that tradition entirely, making everything available instantly and removing the urgency that once made December broadcasts feel sacred. VHS recordings of holiday specials were the 1980s version of streaming magic, a fragile kind of immortality trapped on a black plastic tape. Parents would hover by the VCR, ready to hit record at just the right moment as Frosty the Snowman or A Charlie Brown Christmas aired on television. The commercials were half the charm, jingles that announced the season as clearly as any song. The whirring sound of the tape starting, the glow of the red record light, it all felt like ceremony. One mistake, and you could tape over a wedding or birthday, but somehow, that risk made it special. Kids would beg to rewind the same specials again and again, the images growing softer, the sound a little fuzzier with every year. Each tape had its own handwriting on the label. Christmas 1986 or Santa shows, written in marker that slowly faded over time. When the VCR chewed up the tape, hearts sank like snow melting in rain. But for as long as it lasted, those recordings were pure magic, unchanging even as everything else grew up. Sitting cross-legged on the carpet, a bowl of popcorn in your lap, you could press play and step straight into the same snow globe world of Christmas that never aged, never changed. The static hum at the beginning was the sound of nostalgia being born. Neighborhood tree-burning events after Christmas were practically a community ritual in the 1970s. Once the holidays were over, families would drag their old trees to a designated spot, sometimes a park or an empty lot, and watch them go up in flames with everyone gathered around. The fire shot up fast, fueled by the dryness of the pine needles, and the heat would hit your face before you even stepped close. People brought cocoa, told stories, and treated it like one final celebration before the long winter settled in. There was a strange beauty in watching the last symbol of Christmas burn away, a feeling that the season was ending with a bang rather than a quiet whimper. Today, though, the idea of burning trees in a communal fire is strictly illegal. Air pollution laws, fire safety risks, and local regulations shut down anything that involves open burning of plant material. What was once a neighborhood farewell to the holiday season is now viewed as dangerous and irresponsible. But the memory of those glowing piles of branches remains vivid for anyone who stood beside them, feeling both warmth and closure in the orange light. Click, whir, wait. Watching a Polaroid photo develop was a magic trick you never got tired of seeing. You snapped the picture, pulled it out, and shook it like it could grow faster. In the 1970s, instant photography was a revolution. Suddenly, memories were not something you sent away for. They were something you held in your hands within seconds. No dark rooms, no labs, just light, film, and time. You captured birthdays, school dances, pets, and holidays. You documented the ordinary because the ordinary suddenly felt special when it appeared right before your eyes. The square white border became iconic. You wrote names on the bottom, drew hearts, wrote best friends forever in thick blue ink. The imperfections were part of the charm. A little blur, a smudge, red eyes. It all made the moment feel more real. Parents loved them. Teens adored them. Kids begged to push the button. Polaroids lived on fridges, in wallets, on bedroom walls. They were proof that you had been there, that you had smiled, that you had mattered. In today's world of endless photos, filters, and retakes, a single, imperfect Polaroid holds more weight than 1,000 digital snaps. Because it was honest, because it was instant, because you only got one shot. Department store. Toyland sections were where dreams came alive in aisles of color and noise. Before online wish lists, children walked through entire floors of wonder. Trains circling snowy villages, dolls blinking from behind glass, action figures lined like tiny soldiers ready for Christmas duty. Escalators opened onto pure magic. The sound was its own kind of music. Bells, laughter, and toy demos echoing under the bright lights. Kids tugged their parents' sleeves, pointing to every shelf, their eyes wide as if the North Pole had landed downtown. Parents pretended to browse but secretly took notes, remembering which toy earned the biggest smile. Store clerks in red vests wrapped gifts behind the counter, while artificial snow fell from the ceiling displays. Even the air felt different, warm from crowds and electric with excitement. No screen could ever recreate the feeling of walking through that Toyland glow. When the doors closed for the night, the store stayed alive in children's imaginations until Christmas morning. Waiting all year for the Sears wish book to arrive was a childhood ritual that made September feel like the true start of Christmas. The moment that thick catalog landed on the doorstep, children across America dropped whatever they were doing and scrambled to claim it first. The pages were glossy, the toy section endless, and every photograph promised a world of wonder that seemed almost too good to be real. Kids would circle items with crayons, fold down corners, and spend hours imagining which toys might actually appear under the tree. Parents used it strategically, letting children dream big while quietly noting which pages got the most attention. The wish book was not just a catalog, it was a planning document for the entire holiday season, a shared reference that sparked conversations and negotiations. Siblings would argue over who got to hold it, and grandparents would flip through just to see what the younger generation wanted. When online shopping replaced catalogs, the wish book quietly disappeared, and with it went a tradition that turned anticipation into an art form. Those who grew up circling pages still remember the weight of that book and the thrill of imagining Christmas morning months before it arrived. Candle carousels and spinning angels were delicate table treasures that whispered rather than shouted Christmas. A small flame beneath their silver wings made the angels spin, chiming a soft metallic song that danced through the quiet. The sound was so gentle that you had to stop talking just to hear it properly. It was the music of stillness, the kind that made children watch in awe and adults remember peace. The flicker of the candlelight shimmered on walls like halos moving in slow circles. Every family had one, sometimes passed down, sometimes bought at a church bazaar. You'd light it after dinner, the glow catching the gold of the angels as they turned above the table. The air filled with wax and warmth, the scent of pine and cinnamon close behind. It was fragile beauty, the kind that had to be handled carefully, but that fragility made it precious. Every spin felt like a tiny prayer that the season's calm would last a little longer. The candle carousel didn't fill a room, it filled a moment, and that was enough. Every region had its own late-night monster movie host, and they were as much a part of Halloween as candy corn. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, was the undisputed queen, with her sharp wit and gothic glamour. But local stations had their own icons: Count Gordevol, Goulardi, or even unnamed Creepy Carl types who introduced old horror flicks between corny jokes and bad puns. They were part comedian, part ringmaster, and part babysitter for every kid sneaking TV past midnight. The crackle of the local station's signal, the host's booming laugh, and the low-budget props made it all feel personal. In a world before the internet, they were our strange, wonderful guides through the shadows. They broadcast from tiny studios decorated with fake cobwebs and rubber bats, but to kids staying up past bedtime, it felt like a secret world. The movies they showed were usually low-budget classics, filled with rubber monsters and grainy film. Yet those hosts made them unforgettable. Their humor softened the scares, turning horror into something cozy and communal. Watching them felt like hanging out with an eccentric friend who loved Halloween as much as you did. They made the weird feel welcoming, and every terrible movie a little more fun. If any of these band decorations stirred a memory, share your stories below. Tap like to help others discover the hidden history, and subscribe so you never miss the truth behind the traditions we thought were safe.